There are moments in life that seem small when they happen, but later, when you look, that evening started just like any other. A quiet Thursday night in suburban Ohio. I was curled up on the living room couch with my stepson Ethan. We were halfway through an action film, the kind with explosions, fast cars, and the house had been quiet since Daniel died. 2 years of silence, 2 years of trying to figure out who I was without him. But somewhere along the way, I'd stopped noticing how much Ethan had changed. He was sprawled beside me, one arm resting across the back of the couch like he owned the place. He looked comfortable, confident, and for the first time I saw him not as a kid, but as a man. I swallowed that thought quickly. He's your stepson, I reminded myself mentally, shaking off the unease. But it was there. As the film shifted into one of those unnecessarily passionate love scenes, I felt Ethan lean just a little closer. His arm brushed against mine, subtle but present. His breath tickled the side of my face, and for a split second I froze. I told myself it was nothing. Just proximity. Just shadows and imagination. But then our eyes met. There was something different in the way he looked at me, something that felt deeper than casual, a little too focused, a little too warm. And I felt it, that uneasy thrill. I kept my eyes on the screen, my hands clutching the throw blanket tighter than needed. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe this was just one of those odd in-between moments that come and go. Then softly Ethan said, "Carla." I turned to him, heart ticking faster than I'd admit. "Yeah." He paused as if weighing something. "I just wanted to thank you. For everything. You didn't have to stay here after Dad passed. But you did. You held this place together. And me too." His voice was low, steady, sincere. I smiled awkwardly, maybe. "Of course, Ethan. That's what family does." He didn't look away. "Still, it means more than you think." The air grew heavier, not uncomfortable but charged. He leaned back slightly, gave me space, but I could feel the moment settling deep inside me like a stone dropped in a still pond. That night, I lay awake longer than usual. It wasn't just his words. It was the way he said them, the warmth in his tone, the way he looked at me as if seeing something I wasn't ready for him to see. He wasn't a boy anymore, and that realization terrified me. But that wasn't the end of it. That moment on the couch, that quiet, almost innocent exchange. It was only the first ripple, because what came next would change the course of my life in ways I never could have imagined. The next morning felt different, though nothing had technically changed. Ethan sat across from me at the breakfast bar sipping coffee, like he had a secret he wasn't quite ready to tell. His eyes lingered a little too long when I reached for the creamer. His smile came a little too easy when I caught him watching me. "Sleep okay?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Yeah," he replied, his voice warm and calm. "You?" I nodded. "I guess." There was a pause. Not awkward, just waiting. I busied myself with rinsing dishes that didn't need rinsing. Then he stood up, walked over, and before I could react, took the sponge right from my hand. "Let me do that," he said already, scrubbing the plate I'd just set down. I blinked, surprised. "You don't have to." "I know," he said, meeting my eyes. "But I want to. You do everything around here. Someone should help you once in a while." There was a steadiness in his voice that caught me off guard, a quiet authority that didn't belong to a teenager anymore. He was 19 now, technically still young, but the way he moved, the way he spoke, it was unmistakably adult. "Thanks," I said softly. He smiled, and that smile stayed with me longer than it should have. Later that day, I was in the kitchen again, chopping vegetables for dinner. I felt it before I saw it, his presence behind me. Silent, steady, observing. I turned slightly, and there he was, leaning against the doorway. No phone, no distractions, just watching. Need anything? I asked, keeping my voice light. No, he said, but his eyes told another story. Just, you look nice today. I stopped chopping. Thanks, I said, suddenly aware of how fitted my jeans were, how the sunlight framed my hair. Was I imagining this? I turned away, pretending to focus on the cutting board, but I could still feel his gaze on me like a low hum. That evening, after he went out for a bit, I found myself in front of the hallway mirror. I wasn't looking for flaws, I was studying myself like a stranger might. The slight curve of my waist, the lines near my eyes, the softness that still remained. At 46, I was aging, sure, but not invisible. I hadn't really seen myself in years. And Ethan, he had. That truth was unnerving and strangely comforting. Over the next few days, the shift between us became clearer. Little things, lingering glances, accidental brushes, the way he'd lean closer when handing me something, the way his voice dropped slightly when we spoke alone. At first, I blamed the quiet house, the loneliness, the memories of Daniel still echoing in the corners. I told myself I was just craving attention, and Ethan, sweet familiar Ethan, just happened to be there. But I knew better. One night I was folding laundry on the couch when Ethan sat down beside me. Close. Closer than he used to. Our arms touched lightly and neither of us moved away. "Carla," he said quietly. I looked at him, pulse quickening. "Do you ever feel like—" Some moments were meant to happen, I didn't answer. Because I wasn't sure how to lie to him anymore. Or myself. And in that silence, something shifted again. But neither of us said a word. Not yet. Because deep down we both knew the moment was coming. And it would change everything. The third week of October came with a soft chill in the air. The kind that made the leaves crunch louder beneath your shoes and reminded you that time was always moving quietly, steadily. My birthday was approaching, though I hadn't mentioned it to anyone. I wasn't the kind of woman who expected cakes or parties. Not anymore. Not since Daniel. But when I walked through the front door that Friday night, what I saw stopped me cold. Candles flickered across the dining room table. Soft jazz played in the background. A bottle of wine rested in a silver chiller and two elegant glasses were already set. At the center of it all stood Ethan in a crisp white shirt tucked neatly into black trousers. His hair was brushed back. His eyes unwavering. "You did all this?" I asked, stunned. He smiled gently. "Happy birthday, Carla." I laughed, but it caught in my throat. "Ethan, this is too much." "No," he said. "It's not enough." He stepped forward and handed me a long black box. I opened it slowly, breath-catching. Inside was a deep red dress. Bold, silky. Off-shoulder with a back that dipped low and a slit that ran high along the leg. It wasn't just beautiful. It was breathtaking. I held it up, speechless. "I thought it would look perfect on you," Ethan said. "And I hope you'll wear it tonight." My heart fluttered. I wanted to say no, wanted to draw a line, but something about the way he looked at me like I was still worth dressing up for melted my resistance. "I'll go change," I whispered and slipped away. In the mirror, I studied the woman staring back at me. The fabric hugged my body like it was made just for me. The high slit revealed toned legs, the soft fabric framed my curves, and the color made my skin glow. I hadn't felt like this in years. Alive, desirable. When I walked back down the stairs, Ethan turned toward me and froze. His eyes didn't move. "You look unbelievable," he said, voice low and breathless. "Thank you," I murmured, flushing. He guided me to the table and poured the wine. For a while we talked like we used to about life, this season's Daniel college memories. But the energy had changed. It wasn't just nostalgia anymore. It was gravity. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan said after a moment of quiet. "Of course. How does someone like you end up alone?" I blinked. "Ethan, Life just happens. Sometimes it's not a matter of choice. He nodded, but his gaze didn't waver. You deserve more than being alone. The weight of his words hung between us. I took a long sip of wine, trying to steady the pulse racing beneath my skin. When I set the glass down, I realized Ethan had moved closer. Just slightly, but enough to feel it. The space between us thinned like the breath before a kiss. I wanted this night to be special, he said. Because you're not just a stepmom. You're so much more. I swallowed, unsure what to say. My throat tightened. My heart thundered. And then, before I could stop it, he leaned in. His hand brushed mine. My breath caught. His lips hovered close enough to count heartbeats. But he didn't kiss me. Not yet. Because in that moment, we both knew the next move would be the point of no return, and neither of us was ready to look away. That night didn't end at the dinner table. After the dishes were cleared and the candles had burned low, Ethan offered to help clean up. I told him not to, that it was fine, really, but he stayed anyway, drying each glass with gentle care like he was afraid of breaking something. The house had never felt quieter. When we were done, I turned toward the stairs, needing distance, needing a reset. But before I could say goodnight, I heard him call softly behind me. Carla. I paused at the foot of the steps, hand resting on the banister. I can't keep pretending I don't feel this, he said. And I know you feel it too. I didn't turn around right away. Because I did feel it. Had felt it for days, maybe even weeks. A slow burning gravity pulling us closer inch by inch, and now we were out of inches. When I finally turned, his eyes were waiting open, raw, terrified. I don't know what this is, I whispered. But it's real, he said. I didn't speak. I couldn't. My heart was pounding so fast it felt like it would break through my ribs. And then he walked toward me carefully, like every step mattered. When he reached me, he didn't touch me right away. His hand hovered near my waist, hesitant. Tell me to stop, he said. I didn't. Instead, I looked up and whispered, I don't want you to. That was all it took. His lips met mine, soft but charged, the kind of kiss that made the world go silent. There was no rush, no greed, just a slow, deep unraveling. Years of grief, of silence, of loneliness collapsed into that single breathless moment. I should have pulled away, but I didn't. Because when his hand slipped around my waist and held me as if I might disappear, I realized how long it had been since anyone had made me feel wanted. The red dress slid down my shoulder as I leaned into him. I felt his heartbeat thudding against mine, steady and sure. One by one, the boundaries we'd clung to dissolved quietly, deliberately. We made our way upstairs, each step slower than the last. When we reached my bedroom, I hesitated at the door, my hand on the knob. My reflection in the hallway mirror stared back at me, uncertain, vulnerable, alive. I've thought about this. Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. Not just tonight. For a long time. That admission shattered whatever was left of my restraint. Inside the room, I let the dress fall to the floor, the silk pooling at my feet like a confession. He looked at me like I was art, like I was still beautiful. And in that look, I found the courage to let go. The night unfolded in shadows and whispers. No loud declarations, just breath-skin heat and the quiet ache of two people who had spent too long pretending they were fine. His touch was reverent, his movements careful. He wasn't rushing toward desire, he was holding something sacred. Me. When we finally lay beside each other in the dark, my head resting on his shoulder, I heard the rhythm of his heartbeat and knew nothing about this was casual. This wasn't a mistake we could erase in the morning. This was a door we had opened, and there would be no going back. The morning after always has a different kind of silence, not like the stillness that filled our home after Daniel passed. This was something heavier, thicker. A silence that hummed beneath the surface, full of what we couldn't say. I woke up before Ethan. He was still asleep beside me, his arm draped across my waist like it had always belonged there. His breath was slow and steady, the kind of peaceful you only see when someone has nothing to hide. I, on the other hand, was wide awake. The memories of the night before played on a loop in my mind, his voice, his hands, his warmth. And the feeling, that terrifying, undeniable feeling that I didn't regret it. That scared me more than anything. I slipped out of bed without waking him, pulled on a robe, and padded downstairs. The house looked the same as always, but everything in me had changed. I stood in the kitchen staring at the empty sink, my hands gripping the counter like I might fall apart. What did we just do? I didn't hear Ethan come down, but I felt him. "Hey," he said gently. I turned. He was standing at the bottom of the stairs, shirtless, hair tousled, eyes still soft from sleep. And the way he looked at me, it wasn't with guilt or uncertainty. It was with care. "Hi," I whispered. We stood there for a long moment, neither of us sure what came next. He took a step closer. "I don't regret last night," he said. "I know," I said. "I don't either." The words left my lips before I could take them back. And they were true. But just because something feels right doesn't mean it's simple. "I don't know how to be in this," I said quietly. "You're my stepson, Ethan." He nodded. "But I'm not a kid anymore. And we're not pretending anymore either." That hit me deep. Because I had been pretending to be fine, pretending not to see him, pretending the loneliness wasn't swallowing me whole. We sat in the dining room, coffee between us, and didn't speak for a while. Just silence and sips, and the occasional glance that said more than words ever could. Later that afternoon, he offered to go pick up groceries. I gave him the list, grateful for the space, and when the door closed behind him, I finally let myself breathe. In the mirror by the hallway, I caught my reflection again. Same soft waves of hair, same tired eyes, but something had shifted. Not just in my body, but in how I held myself. I looked lighter, alive. But underneath that lightness, guilt crept in like a whisper. What would people think? What would I have thought of someone like me 10 years ago? I wanted to believe love didn't need permission. That comfort, connection, and closeness weren't sins just because they arrived in unexpected forms. But I also knew the world wouldn't see it that way. And maybe part of me didn't either. When Ethan came back, he brought more than groceries. He brought a softness I hadn't felt since before Daniel died. He cooked with me, joked with me, and brushed his fingers across my back like we were something real. That night, as I lay in bed alone, I stared at the ceiling, remembering the way he'd kissed my shoulder before saying goodnight. Not demanding, not possessive, just tender. And that tenderness haunted me more than anything, because it felt like the beginning of something beautiful, and the start of something I didn't know how to carry. I couldn't sleep that night. Not because of Jenna, not even because of the photo, but because of the look in Ethan's eyes when he told me, calm, steady, almost brave, like he had already accepted the fallout, like he would face whatever storm came and wouldn't flinch. I lay in bed for hours staring at the ceiling, heart racing. The air felt heavier than usual, not just because our secret might be exposed, but because deep down I was no longer sure I wanted to keep it hidden. The next morning was colder than it should have been. Quiet in the wrong kind of way. Ethan sat at the kitchen table, his phone face down, untouched toast beside his coffee. He didn't look at me when I walked in. There were no soft smiles, no brushes of the hand, no lingering glances. I poured myself a cup of tea with shaky fingers and sat across from him, trying not to notice how far apart we felt. "Are you sure?" She saw it. I finally asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, still staring at the window. "It was the photo of you, in the red dress." I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, not from embarrassment, but from knowing how that photo looked. how intimate it was, how revealing it must have seemed to someone like Jenna. "Did you say anything?" I asked. Ethan looked up, really looked at me for the first time since last night. "I didn't deny it," he said. "I told her I wasn't ashamed." His words hit me square in the chest, warm but dangerous, because I knew what he meant, and I also knew the world wouldn't care. "Ethan," I said slowly, "people don't look at this with compassion. They look at it with judgment. They'll never try to understand." He didn't look away. "Do you understand?" he asked. "Do you hate me for this?" I felt my throat tighten. "No," I whispered. "I don't hate you." I paused, my voice cracking a little. "But I hate that this feels right, that it's real, and that I don't want it to end even when I know it probably should." Our hands were resting on the table just a few inches apart. We didn't reach for each other. Not this time. And in that small space between us, I realized we were standing at the edge of something we couldn't come back from, and soon we'd either step forward or fall. The house was still for hours. Ethan stayed downstairs after breakfast, pacing between the living room and kitchen, never sitting, never speaking. I kept to my room, listening to the sound of his footsteps like a metronome of rising pressure. By late afternoon, the silence was unbearable. I walked downstairs slowly, my hand trailing the banister. Ethan was standing by the window, hands in his pockets, shoulders tense. When he heard me, he turned. "You've been quiet," he said. "So have you," I replied. We stood a few feet apart, the air between us thick with everything we hadn't said. "I think we both know we can't keep pretending this is just a passing moment," I said. "It's not, and it never was." Ethan nodded slowly. "I know." I crossed my arms, not in defense but in self-protection. "We crossed a line, Ethan. And now we're standing in the middle of something we don't know how to explain." He stepped closer carefully. "Then maybe we stop trying to explain it. Maybe we just live it." "You think it's that simple?" I asked, my voice trembling. "You think we can just exist like this while the world watches and judges?" His jaw tightened. "I don't care what the world says." "Well, I do," I said louder than I meant to. "Because I've lived long enough to know how cruel it can be." We both went quiet again. Then in a softer voice he asked, "And what about us? Do we count in any of this?" That stopped me cold. What about us? What about the nights spent in shared warmth? The moments when I felt seen, not as a role, not as a widow, but as a woman? "I don't know," I whispered. "I really don't." Ethan looked at me, not with anger, not with desperation, but with something quieter. "Hope. I'm not asking for forever," he said. "I'm just asking if tonight we can be honest." I stood there, my heart pounding, breath shallow. Honest. Could I be? Could I admit that I didn't want to let go? Could I confess that being with him had made me feel alive for the first time in years? The truth swelled in my throat, but I wasn't ready to speak it. Not yet. So instead, I gave a single nod. He stepped closer. And this time, I didn't step away. Night fell faster than usual that day. I didn't remember the sunset, just the way the shadows crept into every corner of the house, quiet and patient. Ethan hadn't said a word since our conversation, but he didn't have to. The silence between us wasn't heavy anymore. It was expectant. After dinner, we didn't retreat to opposite rooms. We stayed, side by side on the couch, closer than we should have been. No TV, no music. Just us and the soft hum of a world we no longer fit into. At some point, his hand found mine. It was a simple touch. Not lustful, not dramatic, just warm, familiar, real. "I've been thinking," he said. I turned toward him, nervous. "Maybe we can't explain this. Maybe we don't need to. But if we spend the rest of our time hiding from what we feel, we'll never forgive ourselves." I searched his eyes. The same eyes that once looked up to me with boyish trust, now filled with something deeper. something I no longer had the strength to deny. I'm scared, I admitted. So am I, he said. But I'm more scared of pretending we're nothing. That was it. That was the line. And I knew the moment I crossed it, I'd never look at myself the same way again. But I also knew this. I hadn't felt this alive in years. I turned toward him, eyes wet but steady. Then no more pretending. His breath caught. Are you sure? No, I said, but I want to be. That was all it took. He leaned in, and this time the kiss didn't feel like rebellion. It felt like surrender, like permission, like peace. And I let myself fall. Into him. Into us. We didn't speak for the rest of the night. Later, as I lay in his arms staring at the ceiling we both knew so well, I whispered, "What happens now?" He didn't answer right away. Then softly he said, "Whatever comes. We face it together." I closed my eyes and let those words settle into the deepest part of me. But just as sleep began to pull me under, a sharp knock echoed through the front door. 3 firm raps. I sat up. Ethan turned toward me, alert. Another knock. Louder. This time followed by a voice, Carla Evans. "This is Officer Dawson. We need to speak with you." My heart stopped. Because in that moment I realized we hadn't just crossed a line, we'd been seen.